everybody, Josh the RV Nerd with Bish's RV here with your monthly-ish industry update where I'm going to dive into some things that are happening just below the surface of the business, both in terms of things happening right now, as well as things that might be coming down the pipeline to help you be in the best, most educated position possible to make decisions, or if you're just curious and you want to learn. For instance, we are looking at potentially the beginnings of, for lack of a better way to say it, tractor beam towing technology. I've also been getting hit a lot with the question, hey Josh, is it a good time to buy, and if not, when? So I went diving through a bunch of statistics so that you don't have to let you know what's going on with like current pricing trends, inventory trends, like ordering lead times, how long does it take you to get something, and all kinds of stuff. And what I found, frankly, is a lot of stuff that isn't really necessarily beneficial to us as a dealership, but I think will be very helpful to you folks. And I love that I work for a place that encourages me to share that kind of candid and transparent information. So as we go, we've got a whole bunch of things to hit on today. Leave me comments, let me know what you think. Like our video if you appreciate what we're doing for you. And if you're new with us, make sure you hit that subscribe button and catch us on the next time around. But for now, let's talk more about the Beam Me Up Scotty tractor beam system that might be coming out down there. Well, even though it kind of sounds like science fiction, we're living in the future, man. We really are. Toyota is beginning to develop a hitchless towing system. Now, it is 1,000% in its infancy stage right now. It's a barely functioning proof of concept initially, but they actually have a working kind of version of this. Now, how it might relate to, the towable RV industry right now, still very undetermined, but they actually do have a functioning setup where they basically have a pair of Sienna minivans where you drive one and the second one autonomously, essentially, follows where the first one goes. Now, It sounds very, very weird, very spooky, but the little demo works on their test track in some very simple conditions. Now, I'm really curious about the discussion on this concept because I think the idea of getting hitched up and towed and going really spooks a lot of people. And the idea of that being simpler and easier and wireless and you just sync two things together and they follow one another, well, that sounds good. Where it gets a little more complicated is how does it work when you're trying to back something up into a campsite, and what happens if it fails? If they're not physically connected and one dragging the other around, how, if there's a signal loss, which is, how many times have you just had your Bluetooth headphones just disconnect randomly? You're like, what the heck? Now imagine if that was a 10,000 pound RV behind you. It's a little spookier of a concept. So obviously, don't expect to see the new Hitchless Apex rolling in at the dealership near you anytime soon in the future. But I'd be really kind of curious. What do you think about this, space age Star Wars concept we're talking about here? So if this was Coffee Talk and I was Linda Richmond, I'd ask you to talk amongst yourselves about the future of hitchless towing. In the meantime, I'm going to start diving into a little bit more of what's happening right now. So most recently, in the month of August, we saw a pretty significant drop in the amount of RVs being registered. Exactly how much kind of varied by segment, and I got this information from a company called Statistical Surveys, which is an independent third-party company that basically tracks how many RVs are registered, effectively sold, amongst a whole bunch of other things they track. But they saw that overall, as a whole aggregate, August of this year versus last year, we saw about 24% fewer RVs registered. The exact segments, like the smaller, lighter stuff, like little pop-ups and whatnot, they saw almost no change. But the bigger, heavier stuff, like fifth wheels, Class A motorhomes, they saw a pretty significant punch in the teeth. So again, what I want to start doing here is laying out information to help you folks, coming into the end of this year, coming into the beginning of next year, be in a position where you can have, a well-educated plan on how you may want to pursue your camping adventures. So if you're looking at one of those big, heavy, expensive things, when those things lay around, you start seeing some pretty good discounts on those. And that sort of trend is something you're going to hear me talk about several times today. And what I want to do here is give you a bunch of information to help you understand how this is all kind of factoring into pricing, because at the end of the day, that's really one of the major things that affects whether you do or don't make the call. So, one of the things that I keep hearing people say is that dealers are flooded with inventory. I think that we've forgotten what normal stocking inventory volumes look like. This, like the store that I'm at, still has less inventory than we commonly carried 2 or 3 years ago, when there was actually still less business happening per month than there is right now. You're like, wait a minute, didn't you just say business is down 24%? Down 24% versus last year at like a peak record year. This year is still looking to be like one of the second or third best years ever in RV retail sales history. But inventories certainly have healed, and they are basically back to traditional normal values. But that also means that more traditional scenarios and circumstances are sort of coming back into the mix. For instance, things that are on hand right now, like we're in that 2022 to 2023 changeover period. So like new in-stock 22s, those things will probably be discounted pretty darn heavily. And looking at recent like Black Book and auction values, there looks to be a pretty continued trend downward right now. Now, the charts that you're looking at, they're over like the last 5 years. And I wanted to get a nice chunk of historical data like that so that you could see, yes, values are down right now, but they're not like they were in 2017, 2018 when that chart really kind of begins. You might notice too, it's early to tell. The data sample is yet a little bit small, but it looks almost like that curve is flattening a little bit. I was, as a consumer myself, I would like to see that continue to trend downward. And frankly, even as a dealership, you talk to the people that work at these places, most of them, it's no secret to us how the pricing and stuff has jumped and quite a bit the last couple of years. And it's not just RVs, it's food, it's fuel, it's everything. But I was hoping to see a little bit more of a continued trend downward. Now, motorized prices have been a little bit more volatile. You may notice how they've been. It's almost like every other month, spiking up and down. Like a bull at a rodeo. Jumping up and down. Whereas for the most part, towable RV prices have been, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, something like that. But overall, industry pricing is trending downward. But in terms of how new RV manufacturers are helping facilitate that, there really seems to be a pretty drastic split in that mindset. So I'm seeing 2 very different philosophies and ideologies here. One, we have some manufacturers who are basically saying, we're just going to hold to the status quo. We are going to continue to add and tweak and develop our products, and you will see the price tags on some of those continue to creep upward a little bit, although it does look like they're being a little bit more selective. They're not being quite as crazy with these additions and price jumps as they had. You're also seeing some manufacturers who are doing things like offering rebates to customers. Like I saw Alliance had a thing where you could, I love the thing, you get $2,022 rebate off of any new in-stock 2022 Alliance they had. Check their website. That might still be going on. I don't know if it is or not. But you're seeing also some manufacturers offer discounts or rebates or incentivize dealers to help get sold off of all their in-stock 22 stuff so that they can keep production rolling on. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, how production is not at full tilt currently, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just very interesting. Oh, also, you're seeing some manufacturers either take their existing products and like seriously de-content them to get the pricing down, or like a good example here recently, East to West in their Delaterra line released the new Delaterra LE series, where they didn't gut their existing Delaterra stick and tin campers, but what they did is they came out with a new series purposely built to be an aggressive price tag. And yeah, it doesn't have all the flashy fancy things, and it is, it's far more of like, it's just a simple plain vanilla box. But the fact is, they're drastically more affordable than a lot of RVs that we've seen in the last couple years. So it will be, I think over the course of this next year, you will very quickly see which manufacturers roll the dice the right direction and which ones are going to crap out. So the thing is, this is a bit of a good news, bad news kind of scenario that we're trending toward. As RV purchase prices tend to trend down, that has a downward pressure effect on the used RV market. I have said for a long time that the value of a used RV is undoubtedly really bolted onto and related to the trends in the new RV market. Well, as the new RVs trend downward, so do the value of used RVs, but that includes your trade-in. That's the really kind of punch in the teeth part of this. It's sort of an easy way in, hard way out, where if you haven't had an RV and you're looking to start your camping adventures, there are some conditions that are moving back in the direction of being more favorable to you. If in the last couple years you just bought an RV and you want to trade it in, we're in a situation that is probably not extremely favorable to you. And that little blip that we kind of had there where you could purchase a used RV, then in 6 months flip it and make money, that was just a weird fluke kind of scenario that I would not expect you would be able to replicate currently, nor in the future coming months or year of the RV industry that we're heading toward. So, you know, being able to say, well, you know, I owe this much on it, unfortunately, that's kind of the hard thing. And that applies both to dealers and customers. What we, both of us, owe on an RV, like what we paid for it on an invoice or what you have outstanding on a loan, has no actual effect on the value of that RV. And there are a bunch of things that we are literally selling at a loss right now just to help get them off the lot. So it is one of those things that does affect us both ways. As a consumer, what that means is, like, if you purchased in the last couple of years and you want to trade up or down or around or anything in between, if especially in the case of a loan, you're probably rolling a chunk of that RV over onto the next one. Again, just trying to be fair, trying to be candid, trying to be real with you. Some of this isn't awesome news for dealerships, some of it isn't awesome news for you, but I'm trying not to pull punches, and I'm trying to give you a real world view of what we're looking at right now and coming into next year. So ask around to some of the contacts that I have in the industry about what's going on with RV production right now. What I'm hearing is, like I said, they are not operating at full tilt. I'm hearing virtually nobody operating at full 5-day-a-week production. I'm hearing some 4-day-a-weeks. 3 days a week seems to be pretty common. I've heard some 2-day-a-week productions. And there are some potential rumors that, like, say this, you know, well, we're kind of in fall, but this winter, there's probably going to be some plant shutdowns expected before some things open back up. A lot of people are predicting about the first quarter of next year, some things will start breaking loose to the point that manufacturers can start to resume a little bit more normalcy in production again. That may, in certain brands, like almost like a regional outage, like a blackout for certain RVs in certain regions, the way that RV production works. I know that sounds funny, but the way that some of these factories work and where they ship to and where they supply, there's certain areas of the country that may have a hard time getting a hold of certain things. It's a little bit hard to predict. It's a little bit early on that, but again, I'm trying to give the information so you can lay the groundwork for making your plans for, say, you know, later this year or coming into next year. So what does that mean for production lead times? Well, I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the answer that I had on that. Since manufacturers aren't really overwhelmed with these extreme, like, 2-year backlogs that they'd had previously, the general response that I'm hearing is, like, if you ordered something today, watching this video today, most brands are saying around December to January is roughly when we'd have it built and produced and rolled off the line for you. Now, that can vary by the popularity of the model. The more popular things are built with greater frequency, the less popular things with less frequency, naturally. And there are still certain brands, like Rockwood comes to mind every time I think about this, that are just still so overwhelmingly popular that, like, if you look in the background, you've seen all kinds of different brand names here. This store that I'm at is a Rockwood dealer. I bet if you've seen even one, it's probably high. Like, it's just a brand that we can't seem to get enough of. As soon as they come in, they roll back out still. So there are still a couple select cases out there that are just intensely popular. But overall, like a general trailer like that one right there behind me, if you put an order in for something, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that is roughly about the time frame you might see that coming in. Now, that being said, that's the rough trend that I'm hearing and seeing today. I do expect that to stretch and lengthen a little bit come the first quarter of next year. Exactly how much kind of just depends on what the market does at the time, I suppose. And I'll have another update coming out by then, before then, at that time, whatever the case may be. Now, as all this is happening, lineups are changing pretty significantly, and in some cases very quickly. And I mean both for manufacturers and dealerships. So manufacturers have been so overwhelmed with just trying to build stuff that was already in their catalog. The last couple of years, we saw almost no new floor plans make landfall. This year, I've seen more new floor plans this year than the last 3 combined. In normal circumstances, manufacturers typically have anywhere from 2 or 3 or 4 new floor plans. I've seen brands that have nearly 10 new floor plans coming out, with a couple more being developed in prototype because they have the available factory time to be able to do that. So the floor plans that you've been seeing, some of them may be going away, and some crazy new cool things might be coming out. If you're a regular subscriber, you've already seen me broadcasting a bunch of new floor plans, and I have a bunch more coming, and a bunch more that I haven't been able to get to yet that'll be coming down the line from there. And that's cool, and I'm really excited to see new development like that. Like, we've seen a lot of cool, exciting things coming from manufacturers in terms of even updates to their existing lineups, like general trends that I'm seeing. Overall, I'm just seeing less carpet come in from production out there. I'm seeing alternatives to bunkhouses, like especially in fifth wheels. Everybody and their brother is making like a big 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom fifth wheel instead of a common class bunkhouse now, which is cool. I'm also starting to see a number of desk concepts slip in there. Also, like recently here, I don't know if you're aware of this, like Dragonfly Battleborn recently went publicly traded, and we're starting to see a continued increase in development of battery and solar stuff across manufacturers. But your favorite RV, for lack of a better way to say it, might be disappearing from your local dealership. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the manufacturer you've been looking at might be retiring your favorite floor plan, which is always a possibility, but your local RV dealer might be trimming down the brands that they carry and kind of focusing more in on their core inventory. So over the last couple years, heck, if you watch these industry updates or if you watch my older videos, you saw there were times where this lot had 2 or 3 RVs available. Like, it was a barren wasteland. We had 15 acres of nothing to sell you, basically. Well, during that time, not every dealership, but a lot of dealerships signed up a bunch of what I call brands of COVID convenience. And basically they were saying, listen, I don't care if you get us 3 or 4. If you can get us anything, we need anything to sell. And as a result, a lot of dealerships on paper have lineups that are far too vast for them to actually be able to support. So what you're probably going to see is a lot of dealerships kind of trim the fat a little bit, and they're going to start narrowing down to just the stuff that probably statistically sells in higher volumes and more quickly versus the stuff that tends to hang around a little bit. And where I think you're going to be able to identify that, because I don't have, like, you're going to say, well, Josh, what brands? I don't know. I don't know what brands Bish is going to be changing. I'm not involved in that. And overall, as an organization, I don't think that we're going to be losing anything. Is it possible we could do some restructuring between a couple of our stores? Sure. But again, I think, like, this is going to be happening across the board. But I don't want you to sit here and say, like, oh, we're not the ones doing that. I think everyone's going to be doing a measure of it. Again, just being real with you, being candid. And I think you'll be able to kind of identify the brands where that's happening by watching what happens coming into the 2023 show season. So the last couple years, we didn't see a lot of shows. This year we saw quite a few come back. Next year, I think you're going to see as many, if not more, RV shows than ever, as dealerships really work to try to drum up excitement to help keep things moving, to avoid basically sediment building up from at their dealership grounds. I think especially in that first quarter of next year, you're going to see some holdover 2022 inventory on brands that dealerships probably are not going to continue to stock, marked down to some levels that are at or below invoice, just to get them off the lot, just so the dealerships can start replenishing their lots with the things that they actually really do want to stock. So the question again, is it a good time to buy? And if not, when? Kind of depends a little bit on what you're looking at and what your local store might be wanting to carry in the future, because some brands sell, it's kind of funny, some brands sell better at one dealership than the next, whether it's because that sales team has had a better experience, whether they're better trained on it, whether the different products that are carried at one store comparatively speaking, your impression is that one looks better, because sometimes trailer A looks good next to trailer B, but it doesn't look good next to trailer C. So you're going to see an interesting little first quarter shuffle happening next year that I think will have largely equalized by the time, for the most part, the campgrounds start opening in the Midwest. They open around April. I think about that time things will be pretty normalized. If you're in one of those nice sunny climates where things stay open pretty much all year, first of all, know that we're super jealous of you. Secondly, you know, it may... you may see it a little bit differently, but I'm speaking from a very Midwestern historical experience here. But that right there, I think, is some key insight to some folks who might be looking at making a purchase coming into this next year. Again, start setting those bookmarks on your browser. Start watching those units. Start getting in contact with the person at one of these stores, and maybe get somebody on the inside looking for you, so that if they can start smoking out, hey, next week we're gonna have this like blowout on these things and the boss is getting ready to just get them out of here, maybe you can snag one right before a lot of that happens. And again, I can't tell you what units it's going to be at which dealership across the nation. This is just general advisory to put you in a position, should you choose to accept it, like Michigan Impossible. Mission Impossible. Michigan Impossible. That sounds like the lamest spy show. But keep in mind, this is going to be something that will be very focused and very specific and very case by case. So what I didn't say is that you'll be able to get any RV at just the absolute invoice cost next year. Like, if a dealer has a 2022 and a 2023 copy of something in stock, chances are they're gonna be pretty proud and they're gonna stick to their guns pretty hard on that 23 copy and say, look, you want the deal, it's gonna be sitting here on the 22. And again, that model year-end closeout holdover models, that's an industry traditional practice that we just haven't seen the last couple of years, because there hasn't been anything laying around in stock long enough to bump into that. So, you know, keep in mind a little bit out there what you're looking at. There's going to be these pockets of really, really good deals. I think if you really go hunting, really go looking, and then my loose, rough prediction is about mid-year next year, a lot of that stuff will have kind of flushed itself out. We'll have the new 23 stuff coming in just in time for the updated 24 stuff to restart the cycle all over again, which is exactly what we used to see year after year historically. But I don't think we can really do a little RV industry update like this right now without talking about Hurricane Ian. And first of all, my thoughts, my condolences out there to anyone whose home, RV, business, your friends, or your family were affected by a natural disaster like that. I know quite a few people down around those areas who, thankfully, were blissfully either completely spared or suffered only minimal losses and or damage as a result. You know, very thankful for that. They're very thankful for that, but not everyone was quite so fortunate, certainly. How does that relate to the RV industry? Well, a lot of housing suddenly needs to be rebuilt. There's a lot of emergency housing trailers, FEMA trailers being built as temporary, you know, domiciles for folks who were displaced potentially here. Normally, like in this scenario, normally what happens is that is often a case where you see a price spike in the RV industry. I'm not really seeing that happen right now. And the reason being, like a lot of materials that build houses and RVs are a lot of the same materials. You know, you think like copper wire, wood paneling, stuff like that. And, you know, if there's a natural disaster, a lot of times materials are earmarked for replacing those homes before they can get to RV manufacturers, unless a lot of manufacturers are willing to pay high premiums, which at the end of the day means dealers pay, which means customers pay. At the end of the day, the end consumer is truly the one always footing the bill. Again, being pretty candid about stuff here. Well, because production is not at a breakneck pace right now, we aren't really seeing that supply and demand effect on the material causing a spike in new RV production invoice costs. That's a good thing, I think, for a lot of people. The downside is it's also not really causing, allowing for any sort of reduction in invoice because those materials are holding their costs. But at the same time, I've talked about this in my previous videos. The cost of things like lumber and aluminum and steel are way back down to where they kind of used to be, and yet we haven't seen a lot of new RV invoice costs drop down. So I'm pretty sure that there are some available margins there for them to be able to absorb a little bit. One of the other things I want to, like, let's say you're looking right now, but in a year or two, you might want to start getting in the RV business. And let's say you watch some of my videos and you know that I actually recommend you start your RV adventure with a used RV instead of a new RV. This whole FEMA trailer Hurricane Ian thing might be something you really want to jot down in your notebook for later on. Because the thing is, when there's an emergency relief thing enacted like this, when an RV manufacturer, they basically throw a bid in and say, you know, we'll build you all these trailers, and they're making money on these things, certainly. But during that time, those emergency replacement units for housing like that, they're not always built to the same standards. Certain things are sometimes relaxed, but the thing is, visibly on the outside, you can't really tell the difference of one from the other. So I guess what I'm encouraging you to do, if you're thinking of buying in a year or two from now, when these folks are, you know, who are currently displaced are able to find new residencies or something like that, a lot of these people aren't going to still be holding on to this, you know, emergency housing camper. And there's going to be a lot of FEMA trailers out there in the used RV market. You probably want to put a little note in your notebook saying you want to ask, was this a FEMA trailer? And again, it's not always easily tracked. It's not always extremely well known. There's not necessarily a specific designator like in a VIN or anything like that. And sadly, the RV industry doesn't just track and catalog things by VIN the way that we would kind of think based off the auto industry. The auto industry has us really spoiled there with their awesome tracking processes and stuff like that. The RV industry just doesn't do. So Ian hasn't really affected the RV market so much right now, but it may affect you depending on what you choose to purchase later on in the RV market, I guess is kind of the biggest takeaway that I have from this. But when it all comes down to it, and you're getting ready to put a lot of hard-earned money on the line, let's be frank about this here. I'd rather be Josh, but I'll be frank. You know, what brands can you trust with your money? Because the thing is, like, who can you ask to get a straight, clear answer on something like that? I don't expect you to just trust me blindly, because I think it's very easy to say, well, yeah, he's kind of biased. He works for a dealership. I've never shied away from the fact that I do. I've never shied away from the fact that we make money when they sell these things. You know, Walmart makes money when they sell toothpaste. It is the natural order of things after all. But thankfully, you don't have to take my word for anything. RVDA every year puts out surveys out there for which brands have the best records, not just in sales, but in service, in parts fulfillment, in warranty fulfillment, in customer satisfaction. And they compile that every year for their DSI Awards, and they've just put out an updated list on that. The brands that are scrolling over here are the brands that, you know, we're basically the best of the best in terms of those factors. And you'll see some returning names, but the thing is, there's a couple, I think what some people would consider off brands that are doing a fantastic job out there. Ironically, some of those are like subsidiaries of some of the bigger RV manufacturers out there, and maybe just because the little brother isn't quite so overwhelmed with certain aspects of production, they're able to take a little bit more time doing it, or whatever the case may be. I don't know, but the fact is, that is a handy little list and resource right there for some brands that, you know, if you are shopping down the line and you're not sure, like, you know, usually more than one company makes a floor plan. So which company's version of that floor plan should you consider? Maybe those should be some names on your list. I thought I'd throw that out there, give you a little bit of a hand. And that's what I've got for you this month, folks. Again, if you appreciate the information we're putting out there, even when it's not necessarily beneficial for us, like if you think about it, some of the stuff that I've shared in this video today is the RVs we have in stock aren't worth what they used to be. You're in a better position to buy than you used to be. You may be in an even better position in the future. You know, we've tried to be pretty fair with you, really let you know what's going on behind the curtain. If you like that, hit that subscribe button, catch us on the next one. And if you want to see all those new RVs coming out, that's one of the best ways, because I've got a ton of new RV footage already coming out that I'm working through right now. Again, I do chapter mark these videos because I know I jump around topics and these do tend to run pretty long. So you can use that little track bar to jump back and skip back to the topic that you're looking for. And again, I'm really looking at, I'd be curious to know what you folks think about the things we shared today, especially that hitchless towing system. That is just a bonkers concept to me that I'm still wrapping my head around. But if you'd have told me when I was a kid, I would have had a space level computer in my pocket that I could use to play World of Warcraft with a kid in South Korea, I wouldn't have believed you. One, because I wouldn't have known what any of that stuff was, but two, we live in the future. Things that just didn't used to be possible become more possible every single day. But just because we can, does it mean we should? I don't know. But I look forward to hearing from you. You let me know. So take care, stay safe, have fun, and happy camping, everyone.